I'm not sure we should host a meeting at all if we don't have a quorum of members.
So be informational.
You're gonna,
Yeah.
change it to a Department of Education update or something?
No,
Really
it's
wouldn't be a council meeting.
It's still a council meeting, because then what we do is we post them. We've done that before.
Just no action.
Right.
Well, welcome everyone. Today we're continuing in a hybrid format. As we know, there are just a few members of the council here. So as opposed to taking any actions minus the quorum, we will be showing this as an informational meeting. We have lots of information on our robust agenda. So Kati, I think we'll still do the roll call. Thank you.
Dr. Maureen Brummett. Dr. Michael Coyne.
Here.
Dr. Margie Gillis.
Here.
Dr. Melissa Hickey.
Here.
Kim Healy.
Here.
Dr. Stephanie Lockhart. Dr. Tamara Lucero.
Here.
Thomas Nuccio. Fran Rabinowitz. Bianca Rivera. Lisa Thomas. Susan Wachowski. Roll call is now complete.
Thank you, Kati. As we will be looking at the minutes from April 16, I do have a prepared statement to read. And this is a reminder to council members, meeting with a quorum constitutes an official meeting. Discussions held outside the regularly scheduled videoed meetings are considered taking an action. Please ensure any meetings with a quorum include the director of the center and occur in accordance with the agreed upon publicly posted schedule. Thank you. So we're going to just dig right into our very robust agenda today. And we're going to review the council norms as we typically do. So why don't we do that, Dr. Hickey, and then we'll proceed with the informational part.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Stoltz. So as you know, we created and crafted these norms when we first started getting together 2 years ago, which include equitable participation, meaning we pause, we're open and allow for constructive silence and sharing the air, active listening, including paraphrasing and being present during the meeting, and respecting all the perspectives where we're assuming the positive intentions and taking our inquiry stances. Once again, we had established our why, how, and our what together as a council, saying that our why is that every student has the right to read at and above grade level by the end of 3rd grade. Then we added on to this about the piece about reading proficiently. How? By leading through change and bridging research to support Connecticut educators, families, policy leaders, and community members in increasing effectiveness of literacy teaching and learning. And what? Building comprehensive local and regional literacy educational systems based on culturally responsive, evidence-based literacy teaching and learning practices, strategies, and structures.
Thank you, Dr. Hickey. So our next order of activities is we are going to be updating the council on the CSDE English Language Arts K-8 model curriculum. So with that in mind, please welcome Ms. Irene Parisi, Chief Academic Officer for the CSDE, and Dr. Joanne White, Education Consultant for K-12 Literacy and English Language Arts.
Great, thank you, Ellen, and Dr. Hickey for letting us come and share an amazing update on the creation of our model curricula. I think, as we all know, we've been engaged in the development of creating model curricula for statewide universal access anytime, anywhere. And so we did have a big release for all of K-8. This is 9 grades, 63 units of instruction total. And it really is intended to support districts in implementing the high quality, rigorous ELA curriculum, which is designed by the Connecticut Core Standards. And we really, well, Joanne, as the lead in this work with our curriculum design team, to ensure that there was vertical alignment, the progression of learning throughout, within and across grades. But there's still more that has to be done at the local level if they're choosing to use this for full implementation or even evaluating their own local curriculum. What we also did was to ensure that the units were aligned to the K-3 reading curriculum models or programs. We've done this with mathematics. We are doing this currently with science, and we plan to do it with social studies. And the way this works is that we work with CERC to convene the publishers, and we give them a template of our units, and we ask them to go through unit by unit to ensure that where the alignment occurs. And these documents are also housed in Go Open. So all of the model curriculum is made available statewide through Go Open CT, which is our open education resource digital library. So again, that everyone can have access anytime, anywhere. And within are also additional resources to help for implementation. We call them quick start guides. So we have quick start guides specific to K-3, and then 4, 4, 5, and then 6, 8. I'm going to pause there because the person in charge of leading the curriculum design team and really getting to like what does the day-to-day or even just unit by unit look like has been Dr. Joanne White. So I'm going to ask you to speak further.
Thank you. So each unit for each grade band, we consider them interdependent. So what's happening at grade K, we are ensuring that it aligns with grade 1, grade 2, but those early grades also have to align with what's happening in middle school. And so although there were different teams working on the various grades and grade bands, we then took a look at the placement of the standards for coherence purposes to ensure that the progression of learning made sense, if you will, and also supported students in gaining those more advanced skills as the grades progress. We were very careful in our language in terms of the types of writing required in the units, as well as the reading demands. The other is Irene Parisi, our Chief Academic Officer, mentioned we did have a steering committee as we were developing the units, and the steering committee consisted of district level personnel as well as school level assistant superintendents from urban districts, rural districts, and also suburban districts. And the consensus was that the reading and writing should happen in tandem. So within each unit, the reading is embedded with writing, the writing embedded with reading, and there is a clear through line and an explanation of how the speaking and listening standards and language standards support reading as well as writing. So there is a lot of information in each and every unit. It's a lot to read, it's a lot to take in, but curriculum experts in districts, that is what they do, right? And it's critical to carefully read the units if they're, when districts attempt to use them for a variety of purposes, whether it's to benchmark against their own curricula, to level set, to implement fully. And the back end of the work for the future, of course, and I'll pass it back to you so you can talk more about this, is creating products to support districts to fully implement the units.
Is there a next slide?
Mhm.
Sure. There.
And then I can go to the website if you want to.
Sure.
Whoops.
Just
You know what?
That's not the right.
There is another slide. Pardon me. Let me just pull that up. While I'm doing that, I can show the, you can do this.
So I think what we wanted to share and ensure like what this model curriculum is, and it's intended to, number one, it's designed by the standards. And certainly the science of reading is inherent in those standards and in that progression that we just talked about. So what it is a model that is very comprehensive. We've bundled and clustered those standards for the day-to-day English language arts implementation and design. However, it doesn't have day-to-day. There are resources aligned to it, but it's not as explicitly aligned to all of the resources that would be required. And the day-to-day work has to be done, as we know, that the teacher work and in the district. So this does not provide the day-to-day lessons. It does provide your essential questions. It provides the enduring understandings. We've anticipated needs to address for multilingual learners. We've aligned to the Smarter Balance assessment. So what might be the tested skills, the tested vocabulary. We have provided some professional, problem-based learning tasks and other means, multiple means to assess. But that is what it is. And it can, like I said, I'm repeating myself, but it's intended to either evaluate what exists in district, can be used for full implementation, or could then be used to supplement. And as I mentioned before, at the very top of that screen, there were some quick start guides. So upon entry, you can access the quick start guide, which just gives you snapshots of what it looks like. And then there's a Q&A. And so again, we're trying to anticipate what questions come up at the district level. So again, it's 9 grades, 63 units in total. That's a lot of information. So there's more professional learning to come. What it is not and why is that it's not intended to be used in lieu of or as one of the K-3 approved programs for the reasons I've already mentioned. We do not provide the day-to-day lessons because that is work. And I may toss it back to you, Joanne, to speak to of the day-to-day work that has to be done with those resources to equip those learners with. So that's one reason why it is not intended to be used as an approved K-3 curriculum model or program. Want to add more?
Yeah, sure. I think too, it's, as we know, it's about what teachers know and understand about the theoretical frameworks that serve as the underpinnings for the interdisciplinary body of research called the science of reading. And it's about operationalizing, right? And so teachers need space, they need time to process conceptually what that means for instruction, and then understand how it connects to the Connecticut standards. So, it's about process as well as product, but the process is where the magic happens, if you will. That's where the understandings occur, and then the application of the skills and understandings that are related to the science of reading. There are guidance documents that I've written related to the science of reading in terms of implementing the K-3 portion of the curricula and then understanding how it connects to grades 4 or 5 in, of course, middle school. But specifically, information is available that relates to the science of reading for grades K-3. So there is guidance to make sure that curriculum developers as well as teachers are on that path for implementing a solid K-3 course, a rigorous course of learning. Anything else to add?
But we're very proud of what we've created, and it goes to the full complement of all of the model curricula that we've been working on for the past 2 years.
And I'm thinking we can do some Q&A for a minute or two.
Sure.
Any questions from members?
Not a question, just a comment. Both in reading and all the other areas that you are creating model curriculum, superintendents are very pleased with that. And just as you said, it can't be put in the hands of teachers as the day-to-day kind of thing. CAPS has picked up on that, and we're creating and developing modules to take the model curriculum, or maybe not the model curriculum, whatever curriculum they want to use to bring to show districts how they would take that and then move to the next step to make sure that it's aligned specifically to their resources, and also able to be put in the hands of, teachers. We're in the process of that. I think Joanne attended one of our, breakout sessions at our conference, and we, I think we'll be, rolling that out in the fall. So it's, it's a perfect, this model curriculum and what you said is a perfect segue into where CAPS is going with that next, not just with the science of reading, although that did trigger it, but we are also what the modules that we create will be able to be used for any area in the development of curriculum. We have found that through the years that the when there are cutbacks in the districts, more than likely, the director of curriculum tends to inherit an awful lot of jobs, and there's not quite as much training in the area of curriculum development and implementation. So it's about how do you know where to begin? Who do you bring together to do that curriculum development? So we're very excited about it.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's why we partnered with the Commission of Educational Technology to have the digital platform to make it universally accessible. And also why we anticipated or considered every aspect so that any client, if you will, any district can take it and see themselves. And they might see more than what they were thinking in their current design, or we welcome feedback just to let us know what did we overlook or we failed to consider. So we are trying to be good role models for districts that we're in an iterative process ourselves. So we take the feedback, we follow that cycle of renewal, which is aligned to our K-12 design principles, which I know you have referenced in those modules. And we hope there's potential in this, like what you're speaking to, and that ultimately use it as a lead resource. We encourage you to remix it if needed, just as you're saying. And to support all of that, we are coming in with additional resources that could make that work even more creative, increase curiosities about it, but also develop capacity and knowledge, because we know that too, that either those curriculum directors or coordinators don't have the time or the access or a team, so we can be part of that work.
Yeah, and we believe, as you do, that there's nothing more important than having teachers have a hand in the development of curriculum and in the development of the goals and strategies, et cetera, in any curriculum piece, as well as programs, the choice of programs.
Right, so we've always said, and with it was very critical that we created the design leadership teams or the curriculum design teams, because it really is created by teachers for teachers. So
yeah.
we stay committed to that. Question up there, Margie?
Yes, Dr. Gillis.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the explanation and the work that you've done on this. I know it's been a lot, and I know it's been a work in progress for some time. I have a question about the second, the bottom of this slide. I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more about that. And then I have a follow-up question, but maybe the first part one is just, can you tell me more about what that means, the aligned core resources, and what would that look like?
Sure. Currently, we have some aligned resources posted with grades 3 through 6 because those units were released first. What we've done is we've invited all of the publishers of the approved programs and compendiums to complete a template. And these webinars are upcoming, they're ongoing, to complete a template that shows, based on the construct of our model curricula, how their materials supplement and help operationalize. So it's both. How do you operationalize the curricula? You need instructional materials. How do those materials align? Well, we can have teachers sit and go through that and understand it. But if the publishers could do that to give teachers and curriculum developers a head start in that process, we think they would be much appreciative. The other piece is in addition to understanding based on the placement of the standards within and across grade levels in the units, it's understanding what are the additional supports that are, that can be provided. So, and it's not just, collectively, we support multilingual learners, we support special education students, and here are all the different types of strategies you can use. But connected to particular standards within units, here are the supports that make sense here. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you,
Sure.
Joanne. So then that helps me, sort of leads to the part 2 of the question, or it's not really a question, I guess it's a comment. Just based on our collective experiences in districts with teachers and hearing from them about how overwhelmed they are right now with what lies ahead of them in terms of implementing the new core reading programs. And wanting, to see how this all aligns. I think it's extremely important. Obviously, the publishers know their products better than anyone, so it totally makes sense that they would be developing these, templates, if you will. But I think, again, this is a comment, the more that we can help teachers see how these things are connected and not disparate, that has to be, I think, emphasized and cannot be emphasized enough, because they'll see these things as different. They'll see them as maybe competing. Whatever happens, I just know, again, from lots of experience with teachers and administrators too, for that matter, that this, needs to be clear. And I'm only saying that I'm sure that you have that in, front and center for what you've been doing. But I just want to emphasize that.
Thank you, Dr. Gillis, for saying aloud that this is an area that we definitely need to address. And certainly, again, feedback from the field in terms of, what those individuals who are responsible for implementing curricula, what they need and would like to have for supports. Certainly, that's something that we're taking stock of. And my presumption is that, okay. My presumption is that
Again?
the
Yeah.
materials that the publishers develop, that is going to be a start for many curriculum developers and teachers. But as you said, Dr. Gillis, there's additional work that will have to happen, because we're not just talking about curricula, instructional materials, the programs, scientifically based research teaching strategies, right? Not, like you said, it's not about separate components. It's bringing it all together. How, based on what I know about my students need to know and be able to do, and given my population of students, what are those very intentional instructional moves that I need to make grounded in evidence in order to elevate their knowledge based on these standards, right? And what materials am I going to use for that? So those are certainly, it's an area of professional learning that we're looking to provide. Absolutely.
So just really quick, the last thing to just show the visual connected to what we were speaking to. So the Align Core programs, here's the 2 that have been generated with Great Minds and then Imagine Learning. So once the user selects on that, this is the template. So it shows here's the unit and then the standards and how that particular program directly aligns. And so that's the work we've been doing. Now, certainly, we're, like I said, renewal, we're open to this iterative process as we get feedback by the user or, our teacher colleagues across the state. But again, this is what it looks like. And so there's more to come. Thank you very much.
And so council members know we'll be sending the updated PowerPoint with those 2 slides of what it is and what it is not.
Stop sharing.
Showing.
Any other questions? You both? Thank you. Very
Thank you.
exciting and certainly coherence building. Appreciate that. We're going to move ahead to Dr. Hickey's presentation. I would like to acknowledge, however, Kati that both Dr. Brummett and Fran Rabinovitz have joined us. And I believe Thomas Nuccio, I think, was some of you. So just to ensure that their names are adjusted for the web log. Dr. Hickey, would you like to
Sure.
continue your slides about the statewide literacy plan?
Sure.
And goal 1.
Thank you. So I have exciting news. The goals that we've been working on since last year are finalized and posted today as we're sharing them first with all of you today. Here is just the timeline as a reminder of the work that went into creating them. We completed the strategy first, and then there was the conversation of separating the strategy with the plan. There was a smaller group who crafted the draft documents for the plan to review. And that's a big thank you to Dr. Brummett, Dr. Coyne, Dr. Jenkins, and Executive Director Rabinowitz for working together with me to draft the plan. I'll show you where the plan is posted and then dive deeply into goal 1. As you recall, at our November 14th meeting, we did vote to move that draft forward to for consideration here at the State Department of Education and then to get prettied up in our communications department. So big thank you to our communications department for doing that. So let me get into, pardon me 1 second. I would like to share the website of where this is located. So it's at our website, which we've been to multiple times by going to the Connecticut State Department of Education. You can go to K-12 education. You're probably not seeing this right now, so let me try resharing that. There we go. All right. Going to academics. Center for Literacy Research. And of course, there is an easier way to get here where you could just do Center for Literacy Research. What we've done, communications arranged for us to have the 2 resources listed right here. You can see the strategy, you can see the plan. Here's the plan that we're going to be diving into today. So as you see, it matches very much the graphics of the strategy with our 3 strategic goals that we had chosen to move forward. And then, as you had requested, listing out by the targets with the start date, the progress, and the end dates. So we're going to dive deeper, as I said, into, seems like I have to reshare every time here. It's always something a little different. So let me reshare the PowerPoint. The council goals. This is not only the council goals, these are really the center goals. But here we go. These are the goals for the center. Center 1 with center strategies. What has been done to date? We compiled the list of Connecticut approved research-based reading assessments and provided guidance to the local regional boards of education. Reviewed and approved the model curriculum or the curriculum models, programs, and compendiums. Reviewed and granted requests for time extensions. You may recall in our first iteration of the legislation, districts could request time extensions. You also know that we reviewed and granted waivers where 17 met expectations, partially, 38 transitional, 24 were deemed limited. And we've assisted districts and charter schools in creating district literacy plans. We have about 130 districts currently participating in the ARPA professional learning, in addition to the districts that are participating in the masterclass, and I'll get into that, all of whom are making district literacy plans. Here are some additional center strategies. The report on district implementation of approved reading curriculum models and programs. It's really supposed to be completed and posted by November of 2025. and then updated biennially. However, the information that we've been able to gather through meetings, phone calls, grant applications, conversations, and the waiver applications, we see that we have 175 out of our 180 districts and charter schools are on track for at least partial implementation by July 1 of 2024. Some are full and some are in various stages. But 175, we have evidence that are showing partial implementation. We are also starting a webinar series. It is posted and we'll be pushing that out. But these are webinars of shared journeys. So we've had districts come forward wanting to share their journey of choosing and selecting from the list, implementing, and the impact so far on their instruction, their teaching, their learning, their students' interest. I mean, they're amazing. The ones that are posted so far, they're just amazing. And I can show you where those are as well. We've been providing support to the local and regional boards of education to implement the K-3 literacy curriculum model program or compendium that have been denied a waiver. All of them had a first shot at any professional learning and coaching experiences that we have been offering to date. And we've also consulted, as you know, the center's consulted with you on assisting districts to go to full implementation. So we're working on that right now. We are leading the creation of a state literacy plan. We had announced before that the federal government had approved us to be part of a state literacy plan experience. So we started creating our plan. We are putting it on hold right now because we are in the process of applying for a grant through the federal government. This is a comprehensive literacy grant for 5 years, where 95% of the funds go directly to the subgrantees, which would be districts, schools, preschools, etc. So we're working on that. These are the professional learning and coaching opportunities that have been provided to date. As you know, we have the Connecticut's Literacy Model Strategy, which is a partnership set up with UConn. UConn then sub-grants with Hill for Literacy and Literacy How. We have 76 schools across Alliance districts and opportunity districts that are building these MTSS structures. We continue to work with ReachCon and PCD, where we have 500 teachers and educators who are involved in this free professional learning. The Science of Reading Masterclass, we are now on our going into our fourth cohort. So that's very exciting news there. I know that Fran has presented on this to the council previously. We hired Hill for Literacy to work with 14 districts. Once again, this is where we did give priority to those districts that were not, quote, granted a waiver. And we have 14 districts who are getting support in reviewing, choosing, and implementing from the approved list. We're currently in the contract development stage for providing more supports. One is through TNTP to also be providing supports in picking and implementing, as well as getting coaching. We're working with WestEd on the networked improvement communities. This started through a grant that they granted to us, and we started with a small group working with our smaller districts. We'd like to expand upon that work. And then we're working with our partners at ACES through the RESC Alliance to have affinity groups that will be happening where districts and schools can be coming together around the common programs and curriculum models they are implementing and receiving coaching supports through that as well. So while the center goals were being prettied up, the work was continuing and moving forward so we could accomplish those goals in a timely manner. Any questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say before we go on, I think we can have some time for questions.
Sure,
There's a lot of
sure.
material.
There were a lot of materials, yes. And like I said, we didn't post until today because we wanted to share with all of you.
I'll start, I guess. This is
Sure.
Kim Keeley for those listening online. So there's 175 out of 180 total districts. What is the penalty for the 5 that are not in non-compliance?
Well, That's a really good question. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to the slide, but I'll come back to that. So they still have until July 1, and the only reason it's 175 is because we haven't heard from them regarding what they are doing at this point in time. So if, we encourage conversations, we've been reaching out to try to gather that evidence. Once again, what we've said in the past is that we urge districts to consult with their lawyers on matters like that. Because it is the responsibility of the school district and the superintendent to follow all the laws of Connecticut and feds.
So there's really no point. I mean, if
They would have
if
to
the deadline goes, okay, but is the Department of Education going to pursue legal action, I guess?
There has not been conversation at this point about pursuing legal action.
Okay, so there are, I believe there's 25 limited, which meant they basically were denied waivers, so they would almost be in the same bucket as those that haven't responded at all.
No, because some of them are showing that they're moving forward with
So-
the legislation.
And how has that happened? So, we saw, we were provided with all the data that they provided to you
Mhm.
to apply for a waiver. Is there a way for us to see what they've provided since to then become more compliant with the waiver?
You could ask the districts. We're not asking them to submit anything, but we've been working with them
Okay,
to support them. So many of them have chosen to go into the professional learning opportunities that we have been offering to them,
okay,
purchasing things through the grants. So we really wouldn't have any tangible documents to then share with you.
But I would add the work, I think, with Hill for Literacy, the
Mhm.
curriculum approval process. We have heard incredible feedback from
Yes.
most districts.
Yes,
that may have been in that group of 25 that
the
just
14.
the other day, they were saying how it was such an incredible process, and they've gotten to that point of making a decision towards full implementation. So that's.
So that's all
another piece of it.
evidence,
Yeah, it's all
right, showing
evidence.
us.
so they've reached out to you and said, like, this is what we're doing, right? We are either, like, I know districts that I've spoken to, some of them are reviewing, or they're going to, what's it called? Pass its sample, pilot, pilot different things. I mean, I guess they're not proving that they're piloting. They're just saying they're piloting, correct? They
A
provide
lot of
any,
times they're using their grant monies to purchase the piloting materials.
okay. I thought that wasn't allowed.
Oh, no, it's allowed.
I thought it was only allowed for professional development.
No,
Okay,
no, the grants have always been for assessments,
Okay.
gift-approved assessments, gift-approved programs, curriculum models,
okay,
and any professional learning that aligns from the people that they're purchasing those materials from.
okay. Just a few other quick things. Long-term funding for the center.
Mhm,
We know that they, was originally funded using ARPA funds.
mhm.
What's the plan for going forward? Because obviously this is now going to be a long-term, I guess, department under the Department of Education.
Sure, so that is a wonderful question.
I mean,
that's-
as we know, things not. get
Right.
funded, Right.
Right, that we've been, obviously hoping through the legislative process that money would be allocated. We are very fortunate that we do have one line that is allocated every year in the governor's budget for the work of literacy.
Good.
And that has moved over to the center.
Okay.
So that is supporting that. In addition, that is why we are purposely going for and applying for that federal grant that could be providing possibly $12 million a year for 5 years.
Okay.
We would only get 5% of that here at the state. So just like the ARPA funds, the majority go into the districts. So we took the ARPA funds that were granted to us by legislators,
Right.
and the majority went into the districts to support them. this legislation.
Right. We've seen that breakdown.
Right.
Gratefully provided that. One of the questions I asked, I think, a long time ago, and if you've mentioned it here, is this Connecticut literacy model strategy through UConn.
Mhm.
It's been really, I've been trying to get some kind of data on the outcomes. It's been in process for, I think since 2013, 2014. Where is that?
Sure, Dr. Coyne presented on that previously to the council. and shared, there's a website also that has
I've
information.
been through the website,
So,
yeah.
okay, so that's what is some of the data that we have. Every year, there is a, report that has to be written to the legislators.
Okay.
And
They don't seem to know about it. I've asked them for the information.
every year we write the report and it's filed in, it goes to the House.
State
It
library.
goes to everyone it's supposed to go to, and then it's filed.
Okay. All right. And then just my final question, the Hill for Literacy,
Mhm.
they have a seat on this council.
No, they do not.
The woman that introduced herself at the last meeting said she works for the Hill for Literacy.
So Bianca Rivera was appointed by the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus. So each of you are appointed by a body in the legislation.
Right?
It's up to that person or that body to decide who comes forward. Bianca started as a teacher, then she did go to the Hill for Literacy for a year, and she's going back into the classroom. So it's really up to those who are appointing as to why they chose you, why they chose others. It's not our
You know,
choice.
I'm just pointing out something that's been brought to my attention, that it
Mhm.
looks, it doesn't look like a great thing that the Department of Education is paying the Hill for Literacy, and yet, they're sitting on the council fighting the work at the center.
We take the appointees and say thank you very much, and that's how you come on to this
Okay, I'm
council.
not asking you to do anything about it, I'm pointing out that,
So a little bit different, question or, perhaps a recommendation. I'm thrilled that on page 12, when I jumped ahead, that you made a statement that materials and programs are not curricula.
That is something we came up with in 2022.
Well, I'm
Here it
thrilled to
comes.
read that.
Yep, and we showed it many times during the council meetings, so.
It
go
is
back
not,
and-
and you know, I'm involved in that.
Yeah.
But when we go back to the center strategies,
Mhm.
in each one, we say, implementation of approved reading curriculum models
Mhm.
or programs. And I read that throughout. I think that's very confusing because are you saying that the program is a curriculum?
Some of them are. So L education is a curriculum. I know we've talked about this before, so I'm sorry that I keep going over and over it. But yes, there are on their approved list, we have curriculum models and programs, as well as compendiums that bring together programs. So yes, there are, when you look at something like an L education, you will see how it's all fleshed out to everything as we discussed or as Irene and Joan shared.
Which programs are curriculum? I mean, how could they possibly be curriculum? How
Well,
could they possibly be?
we
based
have them
on-
all here if you ever want
on
to come and look.
Connecticut standards? They're based on Connecticut
Yes.
standards?
They're based on the standards, yes, because our standards are the Common Core state standards. And as a state,
But
we
aren't they
decided
still
not to change.
programs, guys? Can't we just call them programs?
They are called
Like
curriculum models. They're called curriculums, so they're different than programs. Programs, I know we keep going back to this, but these curriculum actually include what we are talking about, this roadmap that has the goals for mastery.
Through their, through their program.
Right. So
Through their program, which is an issue. Because a curriculum should never be based on one program. Ever. A
So,
curriculum, a program is never, one program can never meet all the needs of curriculum. So it's up to us to say, I mean, to me, that's very confusing when we're trying very hard to tell districts.
that's not a program, so that's an actual curriculum. If you were to look, you can see the curriculum maps and then how they took materials and put it in to create their curriculum. So,
But it's still a program, Melissa, no?
well, I guess, I don't know, if you're defining curriculum like that as a program, I guess you could call what the districts are creating as curriculum programs. So I think it's a much bigger conversation.
It's very confusing because I was finally straight with your model curriculum and I'm finally straight with your statement here. That
Good.
curriculum is not program, and yet there are programs that they can present themselves as curriculum. It doesn't matter, but what do we think? Are
Right,
they-
and as long as, so we did what was expected by legislation. We reviewed the models, the programs, we reviewed curriculum that was submitted. And then from the criteria, posted the model curriculums, the model programs. And then because of the waiver process and because the superintendents and CAPS, we added the compendiums based on your input. So I think at this point, it's up to districts to look at what is on the list and carry through with that implementation. We are here to support them and to help them. You heard that the academic office with Irene and Joanne are going to be providing supports around those curriculum documents that they created in tandem with stakeholders in Connecticut.
So let me, if you were to go into a district and look, because districts are required to have curriculum, correct?
They are required to pull from the list right now.
But generally speaking, districts are required by law to have curriculum, correct? Isn't there statutes? I mean, we used to have the State
The
Department.
big general statute.
I don't know the statute, but I
Right.
thought.
Certainly
we were-
boards of education to ensure with their superintendent that they
Right.
have that program of study.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, but within, I mean, I just always remember the State Department coming in every 5 years to check on our curriculum and the updates in the curriculum. So if they didn't have or weren't using your curriculum or weren't using any curriculum other than this curriculum model for reading, you would accept that as their curriculum?
No, I think this is a different, I'm not sure we're having the same conversation right now. I think we need to talk through it a little bit. more.
I just, I
Because what
think,
we have to look through, so through the center is charged with ensuring, right? That districts are including that they have implemented by July 1 of 2025 from the list. And that's our job.
and
We have to make sure that they are implementing one of the approved programs or curriculum models from the list.
so what I would say is, I just want you to know that will create confusion in districts. As a practitioner, I will tell you, it will cause confusion. If you are saying in the next page, curriculum is not program, and then you're saying your approved program or curriculum, it's incredibly confusing. And I don't know enough about what these programs go forward as curriculum, but my guess is that if they have a program, they're saying the curriculum is based on their program. I would just ask you to
Okay.
reconsider the word curriculum model. That's all. Call it something else.
Yeah, that's in the legislation. So
What?
I can't change the legislation. That's in the legislation.
Well, it says
But-
curriculum program.
Curriculum models and.
Yeah,
Yeah. But you don't have to do that for the center. You're not breaking the law by saying programs, right? Or call it something other than curriculum. I mean, unless you're okay with it being the curriculum for reading. That's the issue for me.
yeah, we vetted this through everyone here, including legal. We need to stay with the legislative language. But what I'm hearing you say is that districts and schools could really benefit by professional learning that helps them to see what is curriculum and how does it work with those programs that are listed as programs on the list. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and what I'm
So-
saying to you is, for me, your model curriculum is curriculum, okay? What we are creating is, modules to help them develop curriculum. And curriculum doesn't come boxed in a program, is what I'm saying. Curriculum is very contextual in the district and should be considered that way. I just think that you're at cross purposes here in terms of what you're saying about curriculum. Just the word, it's the word. I don't care if you used a different word, but it just makes it look like every program is curriculum, which is what I've objected to from the very beginning. And I was so pleased to see that statement from the center. And yet when you go back, I just think it's gonna be confusing. But I'm one member of the council, but I do think it'll be confusing to those who are, to all of us who want districts to have curriculum.
I think Dr. Coyne has
Oh,
a question or maybe a comment on our discussion. Dr. Coyne?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think this has always been a really interesting conversation, and I do think we get stuck in what these different, the sort of semantics of what these terms and terminology mean. And for me, it's always helpful to kind of step back to kind of think about what we're really talking about, right? So we start with goals or standards, which is what we expect students to learn and be able to do by certain points in time. And, you know, I think we're all agreed that there's Connecticut standards that we all have to, that's the ultimate goal. And curriculum is basically like how schools and teachers kind of structure instruction over time to make sure that students meet those goals and standards by the benchmark time periods at the end of the year. And what programs are resources and tools that teachers rely on to structure those strategies and activities to sort of meet the guidelines and the standards. I always think that what good programs do is give you the kind of strategies and the materials and the scope and sequence for efficiently being able to meet those goals and standards. And so I feel like in some ways that's not a curriculum, but those resources can play a good core program, can be the resource that gets you almost all the way there for the goals and standards. What I think we're getting a little mixed up about is the difference between goals and standard, or curriculum and standards, where curriculum is really just the sort of scope and sequence or kind of organizing student learning and teaching so that students get to the place where they're meeting standards. And good curriculum, good programs, materials, play a big role in that. And so we don't need to build a bunch of new kinds of activities or strategies or materials if you have a good core program in place. And I think the Connecticut, the model curriculum very specifically points out here are places in these approved core programs that are going to be able to provide those kind of instructions. So the thing that I get worried about, that being people confused about, is that a curriculum is for teachers to come up with activities and instruction and scope and sequence that sits outside of the good materials that they've already adopted. So what I would really hate is for this focus on curriculum to mean that schools and districts have to make up a bunch of new materials and products and strategies that are going to replace or extend or take the place of the good materials that are already built into the core programs that the center has spent so much time evaluating and schools adopting. So I think a good core program can be almost your curriculum. It's the materials that you use, and if the scope and sequence is good, you don't have to recreate the wheel. I mean, that's the way I sort of think about it. So I think we don't want to get people too confused with having to build big structural curriculum that is trying to replicate and recreate what's already in core programs.
Yeah, that was nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Coyne. Dr. Hickey, would it be very briefly appropriate now to just perhaps list a few of the curricula
Sure.
that do serve their programs because they are purchased,
I can go back to
but
our list.
their construction is all the elements of a curriculum.
Sure. Hang on 1 second, please.
Can I have a question?
Yeah.
I have a question, we have a second.
Okay.
But I will say, while looking that up, when parents call our office and say, I want to look at your curriculum,
Mhm.
we don't send them the program. We send them a structured document. We don't send the whole thing because we don't want them trying to, cheat or whatever. But we do say these are, the goals, the sequence, and so on and so forth. It's not a program, it's just our, our standards that we want the kids to master by a particular grade level, because we have it all outlined. Well, just if that helps with the discernment between the two, that helps me anyway. That is something that it's a document I would hand a family or a parent versus a box of materials.
And if I could comment on that as a lifelong educator, I too, as a professor previously adjunct curriculum, always thought what you've described, Dr. Brona, and also that's a curriculum. I do think that some of the programs, some of the companies have come up with very, very comprehensive programs that are designed, from my understanding and from what I've seen. By example, in the New Hartford Public Schools, they use EL, and so it's a full curriculum.
Yeah. L, ARC, Savas, MyView, and HMH Interreading are full, complete curriculum. The rest are considered programs.
I mean, one question that might be helpful for us to talk a little bit about is we've talked a lot about the difference between a curriculum and a program. What are the differences? What's the difference, or how are we thinking about the difference between standards and a curriculum?
Well, some.
I don't know if they heard, they were having a conversation. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about the difference between a curriculum and a program, which I think is a really important distinction to make. But I'm wondering how we're thinking as a group about the difference between standards and curriculum.
Oh, there's a huge difference between standards and curriculum, right? I mean, standards are very broad, and curriculum brings it into goals and objectives and strategies. It is just a narrowing of every standard so that when you hand it to a teacher, they understand what it is we're talking about. And, my contention for years, even when I was associate commissioner, was that our standards in Connecticut at that time, our framework, were incredibly broad. And, Massachusetts, for example, had gone much more specific in their standards, and they had grade level standards. So when I was here, I remember when I was at the State Department, I remembered beginning the creation of grade level standards, because it was just very amorphous. And so I felt that, you want to give something to teachers where they know what it is what it is kids need to know and be able to do in very concrete terms. That to me is curriculum. And
yeah.
The reason why I have such a hard time with the program and the purchase of that is that I've spent my career in teaching and learning. I have memories of teachers working together to figure out what that looks like, what the goals look like, what the objectives look like, what the strategies look like, so that they could help present it to their colleagues, and they had ownership of it. Handing them a program, I don't care what you call it, doesn't give them the same ownership over the children's learning. That's, and that's why I am passionate about it. I will admit that. I've been doing it for so many years, but I just feel we miss something when we take that out of the hands of the practitioners. And
yeah, I mean, I think we are also kind of talking about different areas of reading too, because say we're talking about foundational skills. The Common Core state standards or the Connecticut standards say things like, by the end of first grade, students will know these digraphs. That's pretty specific. And so I'm not sure what a curriculum would say around how that.
Curriculum? We just have standards and a program and no curriculum?
So one, I'm just thinking about teaching digraphs. Let's talk about that, for example. So first graders are learning digraphs, and it says what digraphs by the end of the year. And a program, for example, has a very comprehensive systematic scope and sequence for teaching digraphs over the course of first grade. I'm not sure it makes a lot of difference or it's very helpful for a district to say, we want to think about a whole different sequence for introducing digraphs. That's different from what the research says about the developmental process of learning digraphs and what a core program has systematically developed over the course of the year. So I think there are some broad standards that are things that are a little bit more around units of study, around different texts, around different big ideas. But when we're talking about foundational skills, I'm not sure that there's an in-between place between the standards and being carefully adopting instructional programs that have that scope and sequence that teach those foundational skills very systematically over the course of the year. So I don't really see the difference between where the curriculum comes in, other than very carefully and intentionally seeing whether the core program allows, through their systematic scope and sequence, students to be able to meet those foundational skill standards by the end of the year.
What about
So I think I'm
How about strategies?
focusing a little bit more on foundational skills here than I think some of the other broader areas about texts and about kind of learning big ideas and kind of comprehension and some of those other oral language areas.
Well, I think, we've argued this right from the beginning of the council. We have argued the difference between curriculum and program and the need for curriculum. And, there are those people that feel you can jump right to program. I'm just not one of those people.
I have
I
a
do-
non-curriculum question.
I do want to say that it's an interdependent relationship between the standards and the curriculum. We do not design curriculum without the standards. The standards drive that. And the standards help articulate those instructional building blocks that are required, as you're saying, to meet by the end of a particular grade. Curriculum and what we have done, and I do believe in the review of the programs, is what is the appropriate placement of those standards so that students can develop those skills. And that if you were to give teachers just the standards as they were published, way back in 2010, when we were trying to internalize all of them, if you read the standards first, you will see what they say, the staircase effect. So there is a progression of understanding and learning with these standards that increase with complexity over time. And so the curriculum helps with that appropriate placement. Or if designed by the standards, then you have the appropriate placement of those foundational skills, which then builds upon the reading skills and the writing skills. And ultimately, there's this all-knowing experience by the end of that particular grade. Whatever resources you're aligning with help to elevate those standards and the development of them, because students need context, or they need the text. They need the experience, right? The curriculum by itself may not do all that. You need the teacher, you need that learning experience, you need their lived experiences to come into the classroom as well. So it's an interdependent relationship, I believe, with all things that we're trying to create. I mean, we're trying to put the conditions in place for students to be able to, as we say, learn to read, but learn as they read, and then ultimately read to learn. So again, I'm going to repeat myself again. It's an interdependent relationship with all of the resources that we're trying to equip our teacher colleagues with, so that they get to a place of having internalized all of it and to make those instructional moves in the classroom that's going to meet the need of that child sitting in front of them.
I agree.
Yeah, I think time.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
I don't want to interrupt you.
Again, this is our work. It's a robust discussion.
Yeah, yeah.
And Dr.
Mhm.
London, I just want to make sure, did you have another
I
comment?
did, and I promise it's not about curriculum. There was a comment made about a grant, and then my legislative group spoke to someone at the state, and there was some discussion regarding bulk purchasing opportunities, if that's gonna ring a bell with anyone. And just wondering what that's about. A lot of my colleagues were really running up against funding challenges, losing positions, losing a lot of money. Where are we at with any type of?
Sure. So just to be clear, it's not bulk purchasing. The State Department is not making a bulk purchase. What we have done is called a solicitation to procure discounted pricing. So by securing discounted pricing over the next 3 years, that helps, hopefully, we say that it will assist districts in the purchasing, so we've kind of locked in. That process has not quite ended yet. We do work with the Department of Administrative Services on that, but just to be clear, we're not doing a bulk purchase, but we're trying to secure discounted pricing for the whole package, the kit, individual, so like consumables, or if year over year what has gone into disrepair and you need to refill, as well as coaching and professional learning, dependent on what the programs provide, or the vendors or publishers do provide.
When will that be kind of flushed out, as many folks are kind of heading into summer to do that?
We're in that process
Okay.
now, so I don't want to commit to a date, but ideally sooner than later, because we know with budgets and certainly after July 1, you have some critical decisions to make. So, but that we are working vigilantly.
If I may, just because across agencies and that partnership, it's actually work that Irene started, what, 3 months ago almost, so it's taking quite a bit to work new approach, this type of consortium pricing.
So,
So really what it will do is allow for any district to then meet with whoever the publisher is of choice that you've decided to partner with, and then kind of exercise this kind of pricing with them.
thank you both, and thank you for a great question too. Dr. Hickey, would you like to continue with the legislation?
Sure. So, Kim read our minds, and we were going to go over the legislation. She asked to put it on the agenda. So any new legislation that impacts the center and the council. So here you can see two. One is Senate Bill number 154. The other is substitute Senate Bill number 14. So 154 actually impacts members of the council. So the members of the council shall expire on June 30th, 2024. Subsequent appointments shall be made by July 1, 2024. Members shall serve 2-year terms and may serve consecutive terms. And then number 2 is there was some changing of the wording. This came from the governor's bill, that the center shall be serving as a collaborative center for institutes of higher education and making available to the faculty of teacher prep programs. I crossed out what's also in brackets. Usually what's in brackets is removed, but just to make it very clear here, I did just cross it out as well. So taking that out, it's now the center is going to be a collaborative center available to teacher prep programs to provide resources and research around the scientifically based reading, research, and instruction, and Connecticut's K-3 literacy strategy developed by the center. So that was adjusted as well. So this year there were 2 tweaks to the pages and pages of legislation that the center is responsible for implementing. The one that affects all of us, and actually this is our last meeting of the year. So it is our last meeting as a council as we are currently formed. So I wanted to take this opportunity also to say thank you. So thank you to each and every one of you for the time that you've served. We've served together for 2 years. We have had important conversations. We've all worked tirelessly for the students of Connecticut to ensure that we are providing them with literacy instruction that is evidence-based and supporting teachers and educators with this. So thank you so much. As a group, we developed the strategy, which do not discount that work. It was huge and a big lift, as well as the plan, which are the goals for the center that will continue. We talked about creating the, getting your consultation on the creation of the processes for the model curriculum, for the curriculum models, programs, etc., as well as the waiver process. So, we've done big things here that will continue to impact schools, districts, and students into the future. So thank you so much. I really don't know what the process is. I'm thinking that the person that appointed you will be getting in touch to see if that is continuing or if,
You're being-
It's
you're
just
being-
yeah, or if something is changing there. So we look forward to hearing from all of the members as to who's being appointed on our council, hoping to see back a wonderful group. So thank you so much on behalf of the State Department and on behalf of kids for your service. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa, for your leadership, and thanks to everybody too. This has been a really important and great year supporting the center.
Thank you.
I would say we haven't always agreed, and it's okay. I've learned in my career that you bring the people that just fit you, because in the end, you'll get a better solution. I would also say the one thing that I am very grateful for is literacy is on the front burner. Having all our kids read, especially our kids of color, who have certainly not moved in that direction to the extent we want, is a wonderful thing. And how we think about getting there may be different for all of us, but I think the goal is we want all kids reading, at least beginning reading by the end of grade 1 and reading independently by the end of grade 3. So I appreciate that work.
Thank you, Brian. We do have some time for the good of the order. If anyone has any comments about successes that you're hearing from your constituents, any challenges that we can certainly move forward and move ahead.
We have a few agenda items that we've not wrapped up, I guess. I didn't realize this was kind of the end of the season. So, a few of us have mentioned in the past possibly auditing some of the waivers decisions. We've never discussed, I've never heard any dissent. So using our new model that we discussed last time, I kind of expected that to go forward. We talked about having speakers come. We wrapped up, I think, that form last time. So I'm not sure if we're going to be, if we're all reappointed, if we're going to be having that speaker. I don't know if you completed that form.
We have not received any speaker forms.
Okay.
I did not fill it out. I didn't
Oh.
realize it was approved.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we're good with that now. So if we complete that form, we submit that. And I guess just a final thing, I noticed the comment about, not sending emails to the whole council, but how do we ask for something to be on the agenda if we don't inform the council so that they can, I guess, voice their dissent to that item? Or, I think we need to come up with a process of things that we want to talk about. And if somebody doesn't want to talk about that, they should, obviously let us know, and then we can either tweak it or discuss it. But
I thought we agreed in the last meeting that the item, a future agenda item would be presented here with the council, and then we would use the consensus model to determine whether or not it was going to be moved forward to be on a future meeting or in a future meeting for discussion.
okay, so we did that last time. We talked about the audit. 2 of us talked about it. There was no dissent or no.
There was no conversation about it, correct? So we would have to put it on the agenda to have a conversation around the audit process.
But actually, I asked for it to be on the agenda for today, and it's not here. So how do we discuss it?
When did you ask to have that put on?
I sent it to the whole council. And I said, if there's a problem, then please voice your concern. But then assuming consensus is achieved, then it would be on the agenda.
So we need to have a conversation first about it to then put it onto the agenda. We did not yet have the conversation. So this would be the time that you're bringing it up, right? So I understand right now you are bringing up that you would like to look into auditing the waiver results. I guess I need to know a little bit more about what you mean by that.
I put it in the email. So, Fran talked about the fact that the council many of us on the council, and I think that Dr. Lucero last time said she wasn't here at that time. But that, you know, we were not really part of certainly the waiver decision process. And so we felt that to be part of it, it would be a good idea that we make a selection of them and go through the process as if, I guess it was starting over, and we would audit the waivers decisions. You know, you take a random, I mean, that's my background. So you take a random sample, you probably take, you know, an equal from each different grouping that there was. And we review what was submitted and kind of as if we were in the room during the waiver process.
And for what reason?
We've had lots of complaints brought to our attention that the waiver process was challenging for some districts.
But if we're at 175 districts out of 180 that are moving towards that partial implementation and then towards full implementation, what else, what other information do we need at this point to then do a waiver audit? If there's a lot
met
of the
with
movement,
districts
going
and
forward,
legislators.
the deputy commissioners met with districts, we continue to meet. I'm just trying to understand what question are we trying to really answer,
Right.
or problem we're trying to solve?
I think we'll let these guys talk about it. I mean, like, you know, I think it's not, I don't necessarily need to audit it. I need you to understand, I need everyone to understand that there are many districts out there that are complying, but they're complying, they're not buying in. They're complying because this is the law and we do not have a choice. And they're talking to you about piloting materials. They will purchase the materials because they are required to purchase the materials. But they do not feel buy-in. And any amount of the time that you spent with them to go through the waiver process, whatever, isn't going to change that, guys. They feel very strongly how they feel. And sometimes it gets presented as all these districts are now on board. And I just want, for the record, to say we're complying. And there's a large number of them that are complying. Personally, I wish we could have done it differently so that this state would be a buy-in state. And unfortunately it isn't. And I'm not putting that blame with the council or the State Department of Education. I am saying that we are complying. And compliance is never a good thing. Buy-in is that much deeper level where you go to somewhere where you own what you're doing. And I would say there are a sizable number of districts that have given up fighting, frankly, because it's the law. And so they're going to comply. But I think that's what I need to have on the record. They will not break the law. Superintendents don't break laws, but they neither will they buy it. And I think that's not said enough. But I think people need to understand that that's what's going on. Not everywhere, but in many, many places. And I put it on the table because I am, you know, pretty transparent in what my members are saying to me. But I think maybe you know it from the waiver meetings, but whether you know it or not, it's true. And I could go through that list with you and I can tell you where you have piloting or you have considering or whatever, or even when you have acceptance of programs. I hope that we move forward. I mean, all I want is science of reading to be implemented statewide, because I believe it's right for kids. But I also believe that we need to be honest with how we're approaching. It's the law. We don't have a choice.
And I'll just chime in because I'm the one that brought up the idea of the audit in the first place. And I, to this day, will put on the record, my waiver was not looked at appropriately. I've had a long talk with Charlie and many of my colleagues had long talks with him that were very fruitless and not helpful. But you're right. We're at the point now where our boards of ed are saying, what are you doing? And, but I know we have districts that are just gonna put something on paper and do something completely different, or do what they want to do because they get good results. So this process has been very difficult for people. And I will say it's probably the most difficult process in my 35-year career as superintendent, well, as an educator, 8 years as superintendent. I've never felt this marginalized in the process. And I consider myself someone that really is a professional, that did the right thing. My dissertation was on literacy. I teach at the college level as well. I believe this process has had a lot of flaws and put on the record, and I guess we just go with it, because you're right, Fran, we're not gonna break laws, and people just, but for all you say here that people call you all happy and excited about things, we get 25 calls that say very much the opposite. And we're not making that up, that's exactly what happens.
And we tried to change the law. We were trying to get it changed, so it would make everyone's life
Yep.
easier.
We were approached by a legislator, and then it kind of changed at the 11th hour.
Yep. And, we spent a lot of time on it. And, we just decided as a group, we're gonna comply because we don't have a choice.
Dr. Gillis?
So this, this discussion is very upsetting to me. That's not why I raised my hand in the first place. The reason I raised my hand is because I really was curious about the districts that were wanting to give testimony to their success implementing a program that is based on the science and why they feel it's the right thing to do. But these comments have taken us, sort of in a different direction. And I guess, what I would say is I'm glad that you're being honest, Fran and Dr. Brummett. I'm assuming that's you because I can't see you, but I'm assuming that's you at the far end of the table. So I appreciate you being honest because it's very revealing hearing what you're saying, that people are saying they're going to do this, and the 175 districts that have basically stepped up and said, yes, we're going to abide by the legislation is not really indicative of their commitment to the legislation. And hearing that, even though I've seen signs of it, so I've seen signs of it too. So I know it's out there, but it's hard to hear that, because what that tells me is that this legislation that has the best intentions, and all of us wanted it and still would like to see it have the right outcome. That is better test scores for kids, better outcomes for our kids. That's why we do what we do. And yet hearing that tells me that's not going to happen, because we're going to continue to be a divided state, which we've been for as long as I've been working here, which is a long time. And it's not going to have the right result for kids. And that just makes me very sad. So that's all I have to say.
Margie, it makes me just as sad because frankly, I have a long career. I've had to hide my phonics books because the State Department was involved in whole language at one point. And what I would say to you is there's never been a time when all of the superintendents, I don't know a superintendent who's not committed to the science of reading. And I think you need to know that. They are committed to having all of the components of the science of reading. What they're not committed to, as I said a million times, I'm so tired of saying it, they're not committed to having the programs chosen for them. That's the whole piece. And, that it is not about not being committed to all of the components of the science of reading. I've never seen them more committed to that, but it's about the mandated programs. That's where you're hitting, that's where we're hitting the wall. And I think had they been able, I have nothing against programs. I've taught with programs. But I think that's where the wall is. And, you know, they're spending millions of dollars on things that they, on programs that they may not believe in. And I think that's where I get really sad, because I think about the opportunity that we have in Connecticut to get everyone on board to the science of reading, through training, through our higher ed institutions, through building the capacity of everyone in the districts through training. And I know we all believe that, but the fly in the ointment was those mandated programs. And I know that the people that pushed that had the best intentions in the world. But, you know, that's where the issue is. I tried to say it in Reading First back in the early 2000s. The feds fell apart on mandating programs. Reading First could have taken off in 2005, but they mandated programs and it didn't. So, you know, I'm sad too, but I don't care, because I'm going to continue forward, and we're going to continue to train people in science of reading, whether we have money or we don't have money. We're going to train people, and we're going to fight for the science of reading. And so I don't think you should be bummed out on not thinking that the science of reading is safe.
We are at 2:31.
Yes, and I just wanted to ask Dr. Coyne if you would like a last comment before we adjourn.
Yeah, I'll make this really quick. And I think, you know, I just wanted to emphasize that, you know, the programs and the waiver process is just one very small part of what the center is doing. And the center moving forward, its emphasis is shifting to what you were saying, Fran, about continuing to provide really high quality professional learning opportunities, resources, leadership training. You know, the new Connecticut model curriculum is coming out. So, and I know that universally the feedback from these kind of opportunities, masterclass, ReadCon, have been overwhelmingly positive. And so I feel very optimistic about the efforts of the center moving forward to really be able to provide excellent support to schools and districts and teachers across the state in the science of reading, including how to utilize and use these programs to meet the needs of kids. So I'm hoping that a lot of this conversation about the programs can be behind us, and that we move forward to the kind of supports and capacity building that I know that is centered to what the center is doing.
And if I could just say one thing, I absolutely believe in the training, but unfortunately, the legislature also cut the $3.5 million that was in the governor's budget for the training in the master class, just so you know that. It's gone. Even though the accolades for the State Department and for CAPS in doing this training were tremendous. We trained almost 500 school leaders, and yet they didn't think enough of it to include the funding in even in the ARPA funds. So it just gets frustrating.
Thank you all for your dedication, for your contribution. No, we don't. We do have one. But it's.
It's 2:33. We are way beyond time. We'll have to take.
We probably should.
Sorry, guys, if you can't hear
Yeah,
what's
but
going
I
on.
think we should, since this is the last meeting, I'm just making that recommendation.
So if we were to move to, because we do have a quorum, it would require, I'm thinking, at least another 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes. I don't know if,
Because usually our minutes require a lot of conversation.
yeah, I know there will be conversation, so.
Right. Yeah, but can we?
Thank you all.
Okay.
We are officially adjourned the meeting at 2:34.
Thank you. Yeah, we didn't have a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Yeah.